Weymouth is quite an interesting place. It's got some real beauty spots that are really lovely. It's got some difficulties.
You'd expect Dorset, everyone thinks it's a lovely place to live, like little cottages, very rich, but it's not in the seaside towns. It used to be the case from about 1945 to about the 80s that the councils had plenty of housing. They built tens of thousands of social houses, council houses, and people could go into them on low rents. Unfortunately, in the 80s and onwards, so for the last 40 years, the council houses have been sold off and the councils have not been allowed to rebuild new ones, which means there's much more private housing. Unfortunately, the private housing is often not very good quality and it's really expensive, but that's the way that England has gone and it's not great. Dorset Council now gets nothing, what's called a rate support grant. It used to be money that was given by the national government to the local government. So the money's been turned off and the local councils get the blame. Why isn't there any housing? But the reason is it's a whole national policy.
I get told by the council, go back to Wales, we have no right to housing. That's wrong. I should be able to live wherever I want to live, you know?
It's not right. We should be providing houses for our people. So he's right.
Being homeless is the end of the line. You know, because where else have you got to go? Where else is there?
The end of the line in people's lives. There's something called social drift. It's not that being in Weymouth makes people poor, it's that people who are poor come to Weymouth. That's the drift, the social drift. They come down the railway line, they end up here because it's cheap. That's the problem we have and the problem we're trying to solve.
Wages are a quarter below national averages, with house prices a quarter above. So there's a big gap between what people earn and what they need to live. So that makes it quite a difficult place.
It used to be that the gap between the rich and the poor was getting smaller and smaller, and people were getting closer together until about the 1970s, and then it started going further and further apart. And since the banking crisis, 2008, it's just gone way worse. The problem is that the vast majority are encouraged to look down on people down here and say, oh, look down on them, despise them, the homeless.
I mean, I think a lot of the sort of marginalisation is driven by fear of people, fear of the unknown, fear of the things that they don't understand. And it's always much, much easier to just push it away, not think about it, not notice it, than to really think about how you feel about it, where your stance is, how you come in. I can't necessarily blame people because actually it is frightening. Homelessness is frightening, and we don't often want to think about the things that frighten us, particularly where I think there's a saying that we're all only 2 paychecks away from homelessness ourselves. When over many people who are not yet homeless, there's a threat of homelessness, I can understand that they don't particularly want to look at the problem.
What's happening is in the big cities, particularly in London, a lot of the poorer areas, the white working class areas, are being cleared and putting up skyscrapers. So people are being socially cleansed, they're being pushed out of the cities and they're going where it's cheapest. And the cheapest place is seaside towns.
A lot of coastal towns have similar issues where this is the last stop on the train, so people just get to the end of the road.
Weymouth is at the end of a train line, and when many people decide where they're going to go, they just ride the train and get off at the last stop. It's a pretty seaside town. It sounds quite tempting, though in winter it's nowhere near as inviting as it is in the summer, but people might arrive in the summer thinking it'll be pleasant. Then there are sort of other issues, such as we've got quite a few prisons here. Many people settle down after having been in prison.
I got out of Portland prison. I just came here, you know, walked from the jail. That's it, like, it's just, wherever I go, I'm still going to be homeless, you know, so I'm fucking 51 now. I shouldn't be living on a park bench.
It's quite hard to help people when there's no money and there's no houses, or not enough money.
There's also not a lot of supported housing.
I think we'll go back to the situation where we'll really struggle to place people.
The people that work at the Lantern have come up here, you know. And I said, just house me. Just give me somewhere to live. That's all I want. And nothing's happened, so.
Weymouth has a problem with alcohol, as does England.
I am just as worried about alcohol as I am about drugs. And alcohol is legal, it's easily available and causes every bit as much harm as illegal drugs do.
A lot of people drink round here. When I come here, I thought the pubs are filled most days. You think, living out, they drink a lot round here. Nowhere else I've been will there be a packed pub on a Tuesday night, and I'm like, drinkers. That's what this town is about. But then if you see a load of homeless people do that, you'd probably think, crackheads on the street while they're drinking on the street or something. But that's not the actual. They're out there for the same reason that everyone else is drinking.
A fella that I seen the other day, you know, he's got a can, and I said, watch what you're doing. Don't get into this. Don't get into the booze, man. No. Because when it's got you, it's fucking got you, like, you know?
Every single substance abuse is the same, technically speaking. Whether it's you going to the pub or you're going to buy a 10 bag at the end of the day, it's a outlet for your emotions and a blindfold so you don't see what's going on.
If you're drunk or you use some drugs, it relieves your suffering for a few hours. So it's in many ways self-medication. In England we have an absolute disaster. We're treating it as a police problem. The use is still high, the number of deaths is going up because we're using the wrong treatment.
I've lost 5 people this year already. 5 people through drinking, through drugs.
The tipping point for me was my GCSE results. That's what really tipped me over. I seen that I failed basically everything. And I broke down and I went home and I thought to myself, I lost my job that day as well. And I went home and I went, I've got to sort this out. The job that I got into was sales. Although that was an up point in my life, it was also a down point as well.
Trauma. I think in one word it can be described.
Cocaine runs sales. It's just how it works. It's just part of the DNA of the place. Everyone's off their head. Everyone. Most of my managers were in their late 20s, early 30s, and I was 15, 16. And I was going clubbing with most of them. But I'd get to a point where I was spending £1,000, £2,000 a weekend, and I'm like, fuck, what am I doing? 500 quid on an 8-ball, like a queue of cocaine, going to a club, getting into the club, drinks at the club, paying the matey in the toilet to go, shh, mate, 50 quid, shh. I just didn't see what was going downhill because the fun I was having and the experiences I was having. I lived my 18, 19 and 20s at 14. I just lost the drive, and that's what stopped me working and stopped me pursuing my career in sales, and basically lost everything to drugs, just buying stupid things. Although when you're on drugs, you're more driven sometimes because you're driving for your next bag or you got a bill coming up. You've got to get your bill plus your next bag. You've got to work that extra harder. Without the drugs, you think about it and maybe you're not going to make as many mistakes. But with the drugs, you'll drive forward. All right, you might make some progress, but you're going to make some mistakes on that progress without making those thoughts in between. And that's all the difference between a drug mindset and a non-drug mindset. So that's what changed me, because I thought to myself, I can't do this forever. I can't keep doing this. So I already had planned to go away to work for 2 weeks with the dog in Cornwall. And they were like, you can't bring the dog. And I'm like, well, I can't work then, so I'm going to have to sit. So I'm sat there in a caravan. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm sat in Cornwall, fucking doing fuck all with myself. What am I doing? I call up my housing officer that was here. I was like, I was in Cornwall, I'm in a caravan. They're like, well, we might have a place for you at the bus. And I thought, I'm going to have to get back thingy. And I don't have a driving licence at the time. I thought I'm either going to have to risk my licence, risk going to prison and go back to Dorset and get a place at the bus, or stay in Cornwall and probably die because I'm going to be bored shitless and end up getting depressed. Basically, I got back to Dorset and a week later I got put in the bus. And then that's where I basically got my help that I needed, that I realised I needed. Getting my dog was quite a big part of my mental health recovery, otherwise I probably would have been dead in the last year because of my mental health and all the depression I was going through. But I got a dog to support me through that journey, like a kind of therapy dog kind of way, to get me out and things like that, and just to motivate me to do some stuff that I wouldn't usually want to do. You've got something to be responsible for at the end of the day. Just because what I look like doesn't mean that's what's going on elsewhere. What's going on in your body and what's going on in your mind are two different things. Like, I'll meet 50-year-old people that don't know anything about homelessness or homeless people, and they'll think, oh, it's just people that are in drugs. No experience. Anyone can be homeless. Anyone. I had a good job. I was working in a call centre. I was earning £1,000 a week, but I'm still homeless. It doesn't mean anything what you earn. You could lose your job tomorrow and have nothing. And that's what people need to realise, is it can happen to anyone. Absolutely anyone.